Hi, Dr. Dolly. My name's Nick. I'm a physician in the Midwest. My wife and I were doing some estate planning, and I was talking to the attorney about asset protection. And I was pleased to hear her say the same thing, which I've heard on your podcast, which is that there's really not a lot of great benefit to doing any kind of fancy asset protection strategies, and certainly not unless you've got a giant, $10 million plus portfolio or something like that. She said, essentially, having good malpractice insurance is the best thing you can do. My question then is there any reason, is it better to increase your malpractice coverage? I've got a standard 1 million, 3 million policy. If I switch to a 2 million, 5 million or something bigger, is that better coverage? Or is that just making me a bigger target for a potential suit? Haven't been able to really get any good data on that, so I wanted to see your thoughts. Thanks.
Great question, Nick. The reason you can't find that data is it doesn't exist. And if anybody has it, it's probably the malpractice insurance companies, and they're not sharing it. Trust me, I've looked hard for that data. Here's my thoughts on the topic. You want enough malpractice coverage that it pays for a few things. Number one, it needs to pay for a robust defense. Okay, a lot of the times you get a lawsuit and it's garbage. It's still going to drag you through the mud for 6 months or 5 years or whatever, but it's garbage. There's no merit to it. And you want to have the resources available to defend yourself against that garbage. And a malpractice policy does that. It doesn't just pay for settlements and for any, judgments that are made against you. It also pays for your defense. So you want a big enough policy that's going to cover that. The second thing you generally want is you want the person that you hurt, that you have to settle with, or that gets a judgment against you. You want them and their attorney to walk away with a big chunk of money. Okay? And why do you want them to have a big chunk of money? So they're happy with that chunk of money rather than wanting to come after your money. Because when you are in a malpractice lawsuit that looks like you're going to settle or perhaps lose, remember whose money you're playing with. You are playing with the insurance company's money. Right? In a lot of ways, you are just the defense witness for the insurance company. It's not your money you're losing. And the vast majority of lawsuits are settled or paid out at policy limits or less. Actually, the vast majority are dismissed, but of the ones that actually have a payout, very few of them are done for above policy limits. But you know what? If you come in there with a $250,000 policy and they look at that and go, what's that going to pay for? And the attorney goes, I'm not doing all this work for my cut of a third of $250,000. And all of a sudden you pissed them off. Now they all want to go after your personal assets in addition. Even if it's just $100,000 or $200,000 of your personal assets, you've changed the game. And so I don't think you want to get into that business. Some people try going bare on their insurance. This was really popular about 20 years ago. I don't think that's a very good idea. I don't think these little tiny policies are a good idea. I think once you get into the 7-figure range, most people that get handed $1 million are going to feel pretty good about that. Maybe not if you run over some CEO or damage some, NFL player's knee or something in a botched surgery. Maybe they're not so happy with $1 million. But the vast majority of people, $1 million is still a lot of money. And so I think when you're into that range, then you can satisfy that need for both the attorney and the client to get a lot, and have it feel like a lot. And I'm not sure that you get anything extra there by going from a 1 million, 3 million policy to a 2 million, usually it's 2 million, 6 million policy, but maybe you have looked at one that was 2 million, 5 million. I don't know. Remember that first number is per incident, per patient, and the second one is per year, is what those 1 million, 3 million means. And so I think the third guideline is to carry what everybody else is covering. You don't necessarily want to stand out in this regard. I am in Utah, an emergency physician. Everybody here carries 1 million, 3 million. And so I carry 1 million, 3 million, and that's not some big secret, right? It's going to be the first thing that comes out in a malpractice lawsuit discovery process. They're going to find out my policy pays 1 million, 3 million. It's not some big secret that I can't announce on a podcast, right? Plus, it's what everybody else has. So that's what I carry. So I don't stand out. Not only do I not look like the guy who doesn't want to take care of somebody if I screw up, but nor do I look like the super deep pockets person. I don't know how big of a fear that is about the deep pockets being an issue. I think by the time somebody's decided to sue you, after that is usually when they do discovery and find out how much malpractice coverage you have. So I don't think you're necessarily attracting lawsuits that way. It wouldn't surprise me, however, that once you're in it, if they find out you have a 2 million, 6 million policy, that they only want to settle for 2 million instead of 1 million. That wouldn't surprise me a bit. I also asked this question to a malpractice provider, the attorneys for the company that provided a malpractice. It was 2 or 3 carriers ago, but they laughed and said, yeah, we'll sell you a 2 million, 6 million policy if you want it. But it's very hard for us to, in good faith, recommend it to you. They thought it was kind of a waste of money. And so take from that what you will. We had an asset protection expert on here a few podcasts ago, and he didn't think it was a bad idea at all to have a bigger malpractice policy. And so you'll have to decide on your own what that's worth. Why not get a quote and see what you think? But I'll bet if you're like most docs, you'll choose to just use what other people are using. Now, don't forget with asset protection that there are a few other things you can do that are cheap, easy, and effective besides just buying malpractice coverage. For instance, not all of your risk is related to your work. You have personal liability sometimes too. So make sure you boost up your homeowners and your auto liability coverage and stack an umbrella policy on top of it. Something big, million, 2 million, 5 million, something like that. Luckily, those are pretty cheap. For just a few $100s a year, you can get a pretty big policy with personal liability coverage. Also, max out your retirement accounts. In every state, retirement accounts get significant asset protection. So in the crazy occurrence, which is what all this asset protection planning is about, is this crazy above policy limits judgment, you at least get to keep the money in retirement accounts. If you're in a tenants by the entirety state and you're married, you can title both your home as well as your investment accounts and bank accounts sometimes as tenants by the entirety. And then they have to actually sue both of you in order to get access to that. So those are cheap, easy ways to provide significant asset protection without doing expensive, convoluted overseas trusts or anything like that. And I suspect there's probably more bang for your buck there than buying a little bit larger malpractice coverage. But why not get a quote? Why not ask your insurance company what it would be to increase it? But expect it to be a significant expense. It might even cost you twice as much to have twice as much coverage. If you want your questions answered by the White Coat Investor, record your question at whitecoatinvestor.com/YQA or click the link in the description.
My dad, your host, Dr. Dolly, is a practicing emergency physician, blogger, author, and podcaster. He is not a licensed accountant, attorney, or financial advisor, so this podcast is for your entertainment and information only and should not be considered official, personalized financial advice.